Nobody asked me to take the brig posting. That's the first thing you need to understand. It was a volunteer slot, buried at the bottom of the duty roster. And it had been blank for 11 days running because the Vethkin were in there. 3 of them, captured during the Corridor 7 skirmish, brought aboard the Resolute in restraint harnesses that cost more than my annual pay, and deposited in the forward brig while command figured out what to do with them. The Vethkin were cat-like in the way a wildfire is fire-like. They had the long limbs, the articulated spine, the amber eyes that caught light from across a dark room. They also had 6-centimeter retractile claws, a bite pressure that could collapse Durasteel tubing, and a pack-bonding instinct that, according to the xenobiology brief, made them functionally incapable of being held alone without psychological deterioration. Command had put all 3 together in adjacent cells as a concession to that last fact. The brief also noted, in dry academic language, that Vethkin in a confined and threatened state had been known to remove load-bearing structural elements from their enclosures. It did not elaborate. The blank duty slot made more sense after I read that. I signed my name in the blank anyway. My supervisor, a logistics chief named Daran, looked at the form for a long moment. "You understand what's in there," he said. "Yes, Chief." He signed off without another word. He assumed I'd last one shift. That's not how it went. The first morning I came in with these standard ration packs and a trolley. The brig was a long room with 6 cells running the length of the far wall, thick bars of bonded alloy, set close enough that nothing larger than a hand could pass through. The Vethkin were in cells 2, 3, and 4. They were awake. They were always awake when I arrived, I later learned, because they could hear my footsteps on the deck plating from 2 corridors away. When I came through the door that first morning, all 3 of them were standing at their bars looking at me with the amber eyes and the absolute stillness that their kind use the way humans use a drawn weapon. I didn't stop moving. I didn't change my pace. I walked to the trolley position, set it, and opened the first ration pack. The xenobiology brief had said they ate protein dense. I had supplemented the standard packs with a protein block I'd drawn from the medical stores, on the assumption that captive apex predators probably weren't thriving on whatever passed for cadet field rations. I slid the first pack through the bars of cell 2 and set the protein block beside it. The Vethkin in cell 2 did not move for 11 seconds. Counted. Then it lowered itself, slowly the way a deep water current moves, all controlled power, and ate. I moved to cell 3, same routine. Then cell 4. I came back the next morning, and the one after that. By the end of the first week, the one in cell 2 had started waiting at the bars when I arrived, instead of standing in the back of the cell. By the end of the second week, the one in cell 4 had begun pressing on its flat forehead against the bars when I passed. A gesture that the xenobiology brief, when I went back and read it more carefully, described as a low-intensity greeting behavior used between pack members who had been briefly separated. I started laying my palm flat against the bars when it did that. It would press back, not hard, just present. A hello. I started talking to them. Nothing important. The maintenance schedule for the week, the weather report from the planet we were orbiting, the argument I'd had with Darren about the trolley wheels that kept sticking. They listened the way cats listen, with their whole bodies orienting toward the sound. The one in cell 3 started making a low, rolling sound in its chest that I could feel in the deck plating when I stood close. It took me a while to realize that was a form of answer. I named them in my head. The one in cell 2 I called first. The one in cell 3, Bull. The one in cell 4, who did the forehead press every single morning without fail, I called Easy. Easy. Because nothing about this posting was supposed to be easy, and that one made it feel like it was. 6 weeks in, a systems auditor named Rail came through on a routine check. He was efficient, impersonal, clipboard in hand. He worked through the brig cells from one end and didn't speak to me while he worked. When he reached cell 4, Easy was at the bars in greeting position, watching me while I updated the feed log across the room. Rail reached out and rapped the bars hard with his stylus, the sharp metal-on-metal crack that you use to get an animal's attention in the way that has nothing to do with respect. Easy moved back from the bars. Just slightly, the amber eyes went flat. I put down my log and said, "I'd ask you not to do that." Prail looked at me with mild contempt. "They're in cells. Yes, Chief Auditor. I kept my voice level. They're also the reason I'm standing here, and not in a different posting. I'd ask you not to do it again. He held my eyes for a moment, decided I wasn't worth the energy, and went back to his clipboard. He rapped the bars of cell 3 on his way out. An afterthought, the kind of thing a person does because they can. I heard the door seal behind him. I went back to the bars and put my palm flat against cell 4. Easy pressed back immediately, which settled something in my chest that I hadn't realized had gone tight. What I didn't see was what was happening in cells 2 and 3. I found out the next morning. I had finished the rounds and was sitting with my back against the wall between cells 3 and 4, reading a maintenance report. This was a habit I had developed. Sitting in the brig on my break because it was quiet there, and because the soft Vethkin sounds, the occasional low roll from rumble, the sound of first pacing in a slow, deliberate circuit, had become, somewhere in 6 weeks, the sound that I associated with calm. The brig door opened. It was Prail again. He had a second auditor with him, and he was already talking, gesturing at the overhead fixtures, not looking at the cells. He walked past cell 2 without slowing. He walked past cell 3. He stopped at cell 4. I don't know what he intended to do. I only know that he raised the stylus again. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. First was watching from cell 2. I learned later, from the structural report, that First had been working on the lower left bar joint of cell 2 for an indeterminate period. The bonded alloy showed stress fracture patterns consistent with sustained, deliberate, patient pressure applied over many sessions. The metallurgist used the phrase quiet hands protocol in her notes because she didn't have a better term. Slow, quiet, unhurried, applied when I was in the room, and the Vethkin appeared by all external measures to simply be resting against the bars. Quiet hands protocol. The bar came out of the wall, mounting with a single clean pull. First was through the gap in the time it takes to blink. It did not touch me. It moved past me with the controlled precision of something that has known exactly where I was sitting for the last 40 minutes and has no intention of changing that. Prail had time to turn. He did not have time to do anything else before First was between him and cell 4, and the sound that came out of First's chest at that proximity was not the low roll that I knew from 6 weeks of mornings. It was something significantly older, something that belonged to dark water and deep rock and the long history of things that understood, at an instinctual level, which creatures in a given space were pack and which were threat. Rumble was making the same sound from inside cell 3, easy from cell 4. Prail and the second auditor did not move. I don't think they were capable of moving. I stood up slowly, my hand on First's shoulder, just the flat of my palm, the way I did every morning through the bars. First did not look at me. It kept its eyes on Prail. But the sound dropped by half. I think I said, to no one in particular, we're done with the audit. Prail left. He did not look back. The report he filed the following morning contained no reference to Cell 2's structural status, no reference to First's brief excursion into the common area, and no reference to the stylus he had apparently left on the brig floor in his departure. I kept it. Evidence if anyone asked. No one asked. Spent the rest of that shift in the common area, sitting at my feet while I completed the day's log. Occasionally, one of the amber eyes would drift toward the door. Then back to me. I finished the log. I put my palm on the top of First's head, flat and easy. Quiet hands protocol, I said, because it was the only name I had for what had kept me safe in this room for 6 weeks, and what had just made sure I stayed that way. First pressed back. Easy made a sound from cell 4 that I had never heard before and have not heard since. The xenobiology brief had no entry for it. I think it was the PAC's version of, that's right.